So I want everybody to start clapping right now. Right now, start clapping. Right now, for my man, Mr. Michael Schulder. Y'all keep going till they get here. For Michael Schulder from CNN.
Visit with one of the senior folks out here in the CNN newsroom.
What do we know more about this story, Mike?
CNN's Michael Schulder reports.
I don't get more music?
Yes. Just point out the bounce.
Hey,
Michael Schulder will once again demonstrate to us, I hope, why it is that he should keep his night job.
Keep an eye on his fingers and his face.
You were featured in Teen People magazine, and here you are among 20 teens who will change the world. A very different image from Pink.
Some thoughts on the week from CNN's Michael Schulder.
As this week developed, scenes of battlefield bravery and blood, scenes of Marines carrying wounded Iraqi soldiers to safety with the same sense of urgency that they show one of their own.
Eating their way through New Orleans.
Now, let me ask you something, because I'm looking at this bait station here, and if I'm a smart termite, I'm going to say that does not look like wood to me.
They're blind.
Well, once they, is that right?
Oh, absolutely.
How convenient. Enjoy.
My name, in case you missed it, is Michael Schulder, and in addition to being a senior executive producer at CNN, I do my own on-air reporting. His name is Long Long. My pieces have ranged from profiles of rising stars, and Long Long is about to catch fire, to obituaries of cultural icons. When she got one of her first jobs at a bar in Atlantic City, the manager told her, "We don't need a pianist, we need a singer."
I love you, Porky, don't let them take me.
And so she sang.
Don't let them handle me with his hot hands.
Are they conceivably part of a landscape that we might just get used to?
Oh, no.
From interviews with a silver tongue.
They're big, ugly things sitting out there in the middle of what should be the pristine waters.
The same thing. What makes me up, you stupid idiot?
To reflections on the foul-mouthed.
I have to pay tribute to the extraordinary work that Mike Schulder did in Rwanda for your individual act of courageous reporting.
I traveled to Rwanda to document the aftermath of genocide.
Life isn't like the movies, and war even less so.
As this week developed, I distilled our network's Iraq battle footage to try and clarify the lessons of a war. Perhaps if the Americans had been able to communicate in Arabic, it would have lessened the fear. And introduced our audience to heroes on a different front. Careful not to touch any surface where the virus might live, Dr. Buckley enters the war on SARS. This is one of those stories where we try to avoid showing faces for reasons that'll be obvious. From teenage pledges of chastity.
Here is a politician who is having an affair and wants the world to know about it, and he's proud of it.
To grown-up exhibits of infidelity.
Rudolph the Conqueror. We're doing a story from CNN, and the story's about Iraq.
I try to take an original approach to a diverse range of stories. My own professional story begins with my father. That's him in the 1950s, launching his career as a singer, dancer, and stand-up comic. And that's us in the 1960s, when I got my first taste of telling stories in front of an audience. What follows is a sampling of the pieces I've done during the past couple of years for CNN. I hope you enjoy your time spent viewing.
Finally from us tonight, a teenage musical sensation. No, this isn't about Britney or some boy band. This is about a prodigy who turns the critics, usually quite sober-minded types, into delirious fans. A dazzler, a true poet, heroic, breathtaking, all words used to describe a young concert pianist named Long Long. Sometimes you get a hint of joylessness in young talents, whether it's in sports or music or science. The pressures felt by kids of whom great things are expected, perhaps demanded is a better word. It is hard to detect that in Long Long, so keep an eye on his fingers and his face. His story and his music from CNN's Michael Schulder.
His name is Long Long. And Long Long is about to catch fire. Some major critics and conductors believe Long Long may very well be the most talented pianist of his generation. On this night, he's playing one of the most difficult pieces in the classical repertoire, Prokofiev's Piano Concerto No. 3. Here's music critic Barbara Jepson.
I have never seen anyone have so much fun playing the Prokofiev Third. He has a formidable technique. He didn't so much pound out the chord as dive bomb them with pinpoint accuracy. What sets Long Long apart is his extraordinary ability to quickly connect with an audience.
You taught me how to passionately listen to music for the first time. Thank you.
When you're getting famous or when you get more audience, so you will play in this kind of hall.
A day before opening night, I met up with Long Long as he prepared for his first rehearsal of the Prokofiev Third with the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra.
Tell us a little bit about the piece you're going to be playing tomorrow night. And it's Prokofiev.
In the beginning, it is a beautiful melody played by clarinet. This is kind of like, as you can feel that later it's going to be big waves or big terrible thing happen, but in the beginning it's very kind of puzzled and the color is quite dark. Even, I mean, also this music is very beautiful, and then comes the string. You know something is going to happen. And then,
Go back to where I understand you took your first piano lessons at age 3, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember what you played in that first lesson at age 3?
I was 4. I think the first piece I ever played, it's this one. And it's Mozart.
Did you play it that well?
Yeah, I think so.
This was Long Long's very first public performance at the age of 5 in his hometown of Shenyang, China. His biggest challenge was reaching the foot pedals. A year later, on to a bigger venue, the Shenyang Convention Center, and a very young performers competition. 6-year-old Long Long took home first prize. By age 11, he was ready for the international competitions. This one in Germany, more gold medals. Soon after, off to America and one of the world's great conservatories, the Curtis Institute in Philadelphia, and an 18-year-old debut at Carnegie Hall, which the New York Times music critic called brilliant. So where can Long Long go from here on the eve of his 20th birthday? Can he get any better?
I will be curious to hear Long Long 10, 20, even 30 years from now, because classical music is one of the few arenas around where age is an asset. Life experience will stretch him and give him more to draw on.
you can tell that's love song, that you are in my heart.
Have you ever felt that way before?
I mean, you mean this piece?
Have you ever felt that way before?
Not yet.
You were featured in Teen People magazine. Here's 20 teens who will change the world. And here you are, among 20 teens who will change the world. Very different image from Pink.
Yeah, yeah, it's complete. I mean, she's a pop singer, and this is a classical music, but of course, there's always connection because it's music and overall.
If you had an audience of young people who were fans of Pink, and you wanted to bring them over to classical music, what would you play for them?
I think I will play the Star Stripes Forever.
Because?
It's really a cool piece, and everybody loved it.
One final question for Long Long about his role model, Tiger Woods. Long Long says he loves the fact that Tiger wins so consistently.
We know when Tiger Woods wins the game. He gets to the last hole. If he's there in fewer strokes than anyone else, he wins. How do you know when you win the game?
It's not like, for example, it's not like you beat the audience and they say, oh, you were so good, oh, okay. The thing that you win is that the audience completely loved you.
Well, you know, there are rewards for watching the entire program, and that was one of them. That was terrific.
Profiles in courage tonight from the war against SARS, reported by CNN's Michael Schulder.
It has all the trappings of a war, children seeing their parents off to the front. In this case, the parents are medical workers with China's People's Liberation Army, and the front is a Beijing hospital where they've been enlisted in the battle against SARS. Some of the bravest frontline troops we saw this week were not wearing green uniforms, they were wearing white. In Hong Kong this week, we met Dr. Tom Buckley.
Nicholas, my 10-year-old boy, said to, after about 3 or 4 days, that if Daddy gets this disease, will he come home or will he die?
Dr. Buckley agreed to take over an intensive care unit at Hong Kong's Princess Margaret Hospital after 16 medical workers at the ICU came down with SARS. And so, careful not to touch any surface where the virus might live or expose any possession that he might bring home, Dr. Buckley leaves his family behind and enters the war on SARS. Some never return from that war. 38-year-old Lau Wing-kai, a nurse in Hong Kong, contracted SARS at the hospital where he worked. He was buried this week in a cemetery called Gallant Garden, which honors those who die while performing their duties with exceptional courage. For medical professionals, working around SARS patients poses a real risk not only to themselves, but to their families as well. Which is why this brother and sister on a tricycle in Taiwan are taken to a street outside the hospital where their father works, so they can see him through a window at a safe distance. Which brings us back to Dr. Buckley and his children.
I'm proud of Dad because he's big and he's brave.
At the hospital, Dr. Buckley instituted stricter precautions at the ICU, including more thorough checks to make sure every medical worker's protective clothing was put on correctly. Dr. Buckley has not caught SARS, and neither has any other worker in this hospital since he arrived. Given their accomplishments helping to contain the spread of SARS, those of us who are not walking around with masks on our faces have the heroes in white to thank. Michael Schulder, CNN.
Finally tonight, an old-fashioned fable about a very modern crisis. It's told by CNN's Michael Schulder, not to a classroom of kids, but to a room full of grown-ups at a comedy club in Atlanta. In this case, it's the grown-ups who might need the lesson the most. A story about words, and it begins with a story.
Basically, with the whole Iraq situation, I was thinking about this old story
about a king, and the king calls in the best hunter in the land and tells him, I want the milk of a lioness, go out and get it. So the hunter goes out, runs really fast, catches the lioness, milks her, gets out alive, bringing the milk back to the palace. An argument erupts among his body parts, and the legs say, we are the most important body part because we caught that lioness for you. And the hands say, no, no, we're the most important body part. We milked the lioness for you. And the ears say, without us, you wouldn't have heard the king's order. And the mouth says, I'm the most important body part. The other body parts double over with laughter. What do you mean, mouth? You had nothing to do with this. So they get back to the palace. The king welcomes the hunter in, says, did you get me what I demanded? The hunter says, yes, your highness. I got you the milk of a pig. Milk of a pig, off with your head. The other body parts panic. Mouth, what are you saying? You're going to get us killed. Mouth says, now, what's the most important body part?
You're thinking of Europe as Germany and France. I don't. I think that's old Europe.
Yes, one's mouth can certainly work against one's interests. That remark from Secretary Rumsfeld dismissing France and Germany as old Europe, and other Rumsfeld comments like it, may have hurt the Bush administration's efforts to build an alliance for a hardline approach towards Iraq.
Perhaps this sentiment best summed up by Prime Minister Aznar of Spain during his recent visit to the Bush Ranch in Crawford, Texas. We are told in the private discussions, and Prime Minister Aznar has talked about this publicly, that he turned to the president and said when communicating on this issue, the Europeans would prefer much more Powell, much less Rumsfeld.
Now, just as disrespectful words can help turn allies away, respectful words can, in some cases, help win friends.
Islam affirms God's justice.
For example, at the end of the Muslim holiday of Ramadan, President Bush spoke at a mosque about the positive role that Islam plays in the world.
Pleased to join you today in the celebration of Eid, the culmination of the holy month of Ramadan.
CNN showed a tape of that to people in Muslim capitals, and this teacher in Afghanistan echoed much of the positive reaction we heard.
When he's remembering this special occasion, we can say that one that he really respects Muslim people, and we respect them if they respect us.
One of America's strongest friends and allies.
In the end, though, words can only go so far in shaping policy. The mouth cannot do it alone. One more note, in the New York Times, a top Russian official is quoted as saying, we are prepared for a compromise, but what kind of compromise can you have if the U.S. doesn't want to hear anybody? If the U.S. doesn't want to hear anybody, maybe the most important body part is the ears.
A look now at the week that brought U.S. forces literally into Baghdad. Here's CNN's Michael Schulder.
This is the road to Baghdad. And here's some of what we learned this week on that road. We learned that a military offensive which seems bogged down on one day can seem like a 100-yard dash the next.
We are moving in the direction of Baghdad, shooting targets no more than 200 to 300 meters away.
American troops tell us they want to move fast to Baghdad.
What you think about sitting?
Not too happy about it. We need to go.
They're not aching for a fight. They're aching to finish the war and go home. Dear Mom, Dad, Sam, Tony, how are things? I'm doing well. I can't wait to visit you guys and everyone in Colorado. It would be like old times. A postcard written on the back of a Meals Ready to Eat carton from Marine Corporal Randall Rossiter. His last. The road to Baghdad leads past foes in uniform and foes not in uniform. On the road to Baghdad, it's not easy telling friend from foe. On the road to Baghdad, an Iraqi father lost his arm in a U.S. air raid. His little boy lost his innocence. Private First Class Jessica Lynch lost her way on the road to Baghdad. Now she is found. Greg Lynch has his daughter back. Judy Childers will never have her son back. Neither will the mother of this Iraqi soldier. While 4-year-old Alex Lucky got a hug from a real baseball player, his father, a fighter pilot, was flying missions over the road to Baghdad, and 6-year-old Tyler Jordan's father was flying home. We learned that in a proud Islamic city, American troops can indeed be greeted as liberators one day and as invaders the next.
There is no more striking example of the sensitivities that the U.S. soldiers face here than what is taking place on this street right up from the Ali Mosque right now.
The city's supreme religious leader had actually invited the Americans in, but word never got to the crowd. So in an effort to transcend the language barrier, the Americans got down on their knees, pointed their weapons to the ground, and respectfully left town. That was the road to Baghdad.
And that was Michael Schulder's work, taking a long and complicated week.
They found their final resting place side by side on the obituary page this week. A singer and a pastor with nothing in common except the needs of their audience.
If I should lose you, the stars would fall from the sky.
Her name was Nina Simone, and she dreamed of being a classical concert pianist. When she got one of her first jobs at a bar in Atlantic City, the manager told her, "We don't need a pianist, we need a singer."
I love you, Porky, don't let them take me.
And so she sang.
Don't let them handle me with his hot hands.
Nina Simone was not just about romantic ballads. She had a lot of anger inside her, rooted partly in her early observations of segregation in the South.
You don't have to live next to me, just give me my equality, 'cause everybody knows about Mississippi. Goddamn, goddamn.
Simone seemed to channel some of that anger into songs about love that disappoints.
Stick to the promise, man, that you made me, that you stay away from Rosalie. Oh, Daddy.
You could not ask for a more different tone than the one struck by the Unity Church and the church's man in New York, Eric Butterworth.
This is Eric Butterworth. You can change your life by altering your thoughts.
Reverend Butterworth's pulpit was New York's Lincoln Center, where several thousand people from all walks of life, including a Nina Simone fan or two, would flock every Sunday to hear his message of the power of positive thinking.
Someone comes into the office in the morning singing a happy song with a smiling face. He's looked upon with suspicion, and people say, "What's the matter with him? What does he have to be so happy about?" But you see, you do not have to have something to be happy about. You can be happy at any time you want if you simply want to be happy. For the joy potential is a vital and supportive force within you and is, as Emerson says, the continuation of the divine effort that made you in the first place.
Nina Simone, who was buried today in her adopted country, France, rarely sang about happiness. "I feel what my audience feels," she once said, "and people who listen to me know that, and it makes them feel like they are not alone." Nina Simone and Eric Butterworth, a voice that provided comfort and a voice that offered hope. Michael Schulder, CNN.